The research habitat known as Unity Spire orbited the binary system of Aurelia Prime like a glittering jewel in the void. Billed as a beacon of interspecies cooperation, the truth was more nuanced. It was less of a utopia and more of a glorified diplomatic lab where science, politics, and species-sized egos collided behind closed airlocks. Dr. Serona Vial adjusted the fit of her slate-gray uniform, the synthetic fabric clinging to her lithe frame like a second skin. The bioluminescent circuit lines that ran along her collar and sleeves pulsed faintly, a side effect of the suit's biometric sync with her elevated pulse. She sighed and tucked a strand of iridescent teal hair behind her pointed ear, glancing at the chronodisplay above docking bay 4. 3 minutes. Her fingers fidgeted with the clasp of her data tablet as she tried to calm herself. Serona was the Spire's lead exogeneticist, specializing in the reproductive anomalies of non-telepathic species. She had catalogued over 4,000 mating rituals across 24 worlds. And yet, the humans. Their biology was maddeningly contradictory. All the published material pointed to one conclusion: human males operated with a level of sexual frequency and resilience that simply defied logic. "Steady yourself," she whispered, inhaling through her gills and releasing a slow breath through her mouth. "He's just a subject." The soft chime of the AI echoed overhead. "Incoming diplomatic vessel Concord Lance has initiated docking sequence. Passenger disembarkation in 2 minutes." Serona's heart gave a nervous flutter. This wasn't just any subject. She had requested him personally, Lieutenant Commander K.O. Riven of the Terran Exploration Corps. Not only was he one of the few humans cleared for xenobiological study, but his records had caught her attention for another reason. One she hadn't dared share with the station's ethics board. A hiss signaled the airlock cycling. The blast door split apart, revealing a tall figure in deep navy armor, the joints lined with plasma blue trim. He stepped forward, helmet tucked under one arm, revealing chiseled features, tousled dark hair, and sharp amber eyes that locked onto her with casual ease. "Dr. Vial?" he asked, his voice rich and smooth. "Lieutenant Commander K.O. Riven, reporting as requested." Serona swallowed, extending a hand. "Commander Riven, thank you for agreeing to this consultation." His grip was strong but measured. "Happy to help. Though I admit the request was unorthodox." Serona turned, gesturing smoothly for Kale to follow. "Let's continue in my lab. There's a lot to cover, and I'd rather do it somewhere more controlled." The corridor curved like a ribbon of light ahead of them, sleek and lined with pulse-sensitive lighting that dimmed or brightened with each step. Kale walked beside her with the easy gait of someone used to both gravity shifts and battlefield terrain. Serona risked a glance at him and felt another flicker of nervous anticipation. He moved like a predator, calm, confident, aware of every step. And yet he spoke with the warmth of a diplomat. "Unity Spire's impressive," he said, breaking the silence. "We've got smaller labs back in the Altaris Reach, but nothing with this kind of diversity. 18 species under one roof? 19 as of this month," Serona replied, grateful for the neutral topic. "The Spire sits at a major galactic crossroads. Perfect for cross-species studies and research into mutual biological tolerances." "Tolerances," Kale echoed with a faint grin. "Nice way to phrase it." They reached her lab, a wide circular space filled with hovering data panels, spectral projections, and DNA helix models suspended in fluidic containers. A soft hum filled the air, and the scent of ozone and sterilized metal greeted them. On the far wall, a massive screen displayed rotating anatomical charts of various species, with one in particular dominating the center: human male physiology. Kale arched an eyebrow. "Looks like you've been doing your homework." "I always prepare thoroughly," she said, activating the lab's privacy field. The translucent walls shimmered and then frosted over, blocking outside view and muting any external noise. "You requested me by name," Kale said, arms folding across his chest. "Yet most of the data here was available through the standard research exchange." Serona hesitated. "The data had gaps. And contradictions." "Contradictions?" he asked. Yes, she said, stepping closer to the screen. According to human medical records, males can engage in reproductive activity nearly every day without requiring recovery time. That's generally accurate, Kale said slowly, clearly amused. Serana's expression tightened with frustration. But that's biologically implausible. Even high-stamina species like the Valerians require rest periods. Your reproductive organ sustains repetitive high-pressure exertion with no degradation. No cellular trauma. No downtime. It doesn't make sense. Kale blinked. Are you seriously asking me how our equipment holds up without breaking? Yes, she said firmly. I need answers, Commander. I need data. Empirical data. His lips quirked into a smirk. And how do you propose collecting it? Serana squared her shoulders. Through direct observation. Controlled experimentation. I am a scientist, after all. Kale chuckled, rubbing his jaw. Well, Doctor, in the name of science, I'm all yours. Serana's pulse thudded in her throat as she activated the biometric consent forms on her terminal. Standard research procedure. You'll need to authorize physical assessments and provide baseline physiological data. Kale approached the console, his frame casting a shadow over the screen. Do all your subjects go through this level of scrutiny? Only the anomalies, she replied, her tone neutral, though her skin was already tingling from his proximity. And according to our models, you qualify. He took the stylus and signed with a confident flick. Happy to represent the anomaly category. Just as the confirmation chimed, the lab's lights flickered. A second later, the station-wide alert klaxon blared through the speakers. The voice of the central AI crackled to life. Alert! Multiple unidentified vessels approaching Unity Spire. All personnel to defensive positions. Estimated breach in 16 minutes. Kale's posture changed instantly. The warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by a steely intensity. How far are we from the docking bay? Other side of the station. Serana replied quickly, already checking the station's surveillance feeds. You won't make it before they breach. 3 vessels, slender frames, low profile, plasma-tipped hardpoints. Tavorian raiders, Kale said darkly. I've dealt with their kind. They don't come for diplomacy. Serana turned to him. They're targeting research stations now. Data theft. Experimental subjects. Biological specimens. And Nexery? He asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. We're highly compatible with neural tech. Some say we can interface directly with biosystems. Others want to test the theory on unwilling donors. Kale's jaw tightened. Then we fortify this lab and hold them off. She led him to a recessed section of the wall and tapped a hidden panel. It slid open to reveal a small but well-maintained weapons cache, energy blasters, pulse grenades, and shield capacitors. Kale let out a low whistle. For a research station, you're better stocked than most outposts I've seen. I believe in preparation, she said, handing him a sidearm. You know how to use it? Kale snapped open the chamber and checked the charge. It'll do. As the reinforced doors sealed around them and the defensive barriers engaged, a hush fell over the lab. Through the frosted glass, they could see faint shadows of chaos rippling through the outer corridors. Shouting. Flashing lights. The distant whine of plasma tools cutting metal. Kale stood at her side, blaster ready. Still think this is just an academic exercise? Serana glanced up at him, the tension between them deepening. I came here to study human biology. I didn't expect to fight beside it. Kale's eyes narrowed with a hint of a smile. Let's just hope you survive long enough to finish your thesis. The lab trembled with a low, metallic groan as the first impact struck the station. Somewhere distant, metal screamed under pressure, and lights along the ceiling blinked from blue to red. Serana moved swiftly to her console, pulling up real-time feeds from the station's internal cameras. They've breached Deck 6. Too fast. Security's already engaged, but there aren't enough of them. Kale paced beside her, checking the defensive lines they could hold. How long do we have until they reach us? 10 minutes, maybe less. They're splitting into squads. Her fingers danced over the holographic interface. And they're not targeting central systems, they're heading for isolated labs. Kale gave her a hard look. They want research. Or researchers. Serana's mouth was dry. If they get into my data vault, they'll find the genetic logs. Every file I have on human physiology. Including our new entries. Kale didn't hesitate. He pulled another weapon from the wall cache and handed it to her. You know how to use this? She powered it up, the pulse core glowing softly in her hand. I trained with the Hilarion Rangers. I can shoot. He offered a nod of approval. Good. Then we hold here. For several tense minutes, they worked together, activating inner shields, reinforcing the door locks, and rigging a makeshift deterrent near the primary entrance with flash detonators. Serana risked a glance at him as he adjusted the shielding node above the main console. His arms flexed beneath the reinforced plates of his uniform, the scars on his skin catching the blue glow of the lab. There was something deeply reassuring in his calm, no panic, no wasted movement. Just the quiet efficiency of a man who'd fought before and lived to tell the tale. You've done this more than once, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Kale didn't look at her. Combat comes with the job. Especially when you're assigned to systems on the frontier. But never on a research station. Never while babysitting a scientist. I don't need a babysitter. He glanced at her finally, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. No. You need a partner. Someone to watch your back. She met his gaze head on. Then we stand together. A sudden tremor rocked the lab. Sparks showered from the ceiling. From beyond the reinforced door came the unmistakable whine of a plasma cutter starting to slice through the metal. Kale moved into position beside the barricade, blaster raised. Showtime. Serana joined him, gripping her weapon tightly. The cutter's hiss grew louder, then stopped with a final sizzle. A heavy silence followed, just long enough for dread to settle in. Then the door exploded inward. 3 armored raiders surged through the smoke. Kale fired first, striking the lead intruder center mass. Serana dropped to one knee, her shot taking the second in the leg. The third raised a long-barreled weapon, but Kale was already there, slamming the raider against the wall with brutal force. The fight was fast. Messy. But over in seconds. Breathing hard, Serana looked around. That was just a scout team. Kale nodded grimly. More will come. We need to hold this line. She reloaded her weapon, her hand steady now. Then we hold. The lab was quiet again, save for the low hum of emergency systems and the slow hiss of smoke dispersing. Serana stood with her back to the door, blaster still raised, heart pounding. She could feel the tremor in her fingers, part adrenaline, part disbelief. She had never killed before. Kale noticed. You all right? She nodded, then shook her head. I didn't freeze. That's something. You didn't just hold your own, he said, holstering his weapon. You were better than some recruits I've trained. Her breath came out in a shaky laugh. Let's hope that was the worst of it. He moved to her side, checking her for injuries. You're not hit? No. Just shaken. That was my first close-quarters combat experience. You did well. His voice was low, steady. And now you know, you can survive it. Her gaze drifted back to the shattered door, the streaks of dark alien blood already drying on the floor. I didn't come here for this, Kale. I came to study biology. Genetics. Patterns in reproduction, not patterns in warfare. You're still doing that, he said, offering a small, dry smile. One just happens to involve a little more shooting. She gave a half laugh, then slowly lowered her weapon. I need to check the data core. Make sure none of the files were compromised. As she moved toward the secure vault, Kale followed. Can I ask you something? Of course, she said, unlocking the vault panel. The biometric skin flickered as it read her palm. He hesitated. Why me? Her hand paused over the terminal. You mean why I requested you? He nodded. Serana turned slowly to face him. Because your medical files didn't add up. You weren't just average in reproductive performance, you exceeded every metric. Recovery time. Cellular regeneration. Hormonal balance. Your records were anomalous. Kale raised a brow. So I was a scientific puzzle. At first, yes, she admitted. But there was something else. A gut feeling. Something I couldn't explain with charts or blood work. He took a step closer. And now? Her voice was quiet. Now I think there's more to your biology than even our records can show. Something unique. A light blinked on the console, vault intact. She sighed in relief. Data's safe. But I'm running a backup to an isolated node. Kale nodded. Smart. These raiders, someone might have hired them to get that research. Your files. Why would they care about human mating endurance? She asked, genuinely perplexed. Maybe it's not about endurance, he said. Maybe it's about compatibility. Serana stared at him. You think someone suspects reproduction between humans and non-human species? Kale didn't answer. But the look in his eyes said enough. Serana felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Then we'd better find out if that's even possible, she said softly. Before someone else does. By the time the last echoes of the breach faded and station security confirmed a full retreat, the lab was quiet once again. The lights flickered back to full power, and the environmental systems hummed to life with a gust of recycled, purified air. Serana and Kale stood in the stillness, the aftermath of combat still tingling in their muscles, tension slowly giving way to thought. Serana crossed to her workstation and began inputting commands, her voice focused. I need a full genomic comparison, your base genetic code cross-referenced against necessary reproductive markers. If there's even the smallest chance of compatibility, it'll be evident in the telomeric bridges or game-tick adhesion sites. Kale leaned on the nearby console, watching her fingers fly over the display. Translation, please? She smirked faintly. I'm going to see if, biologically, a human and a necessary could conceive a child naturally. Kale's eyes narrowed slightly, curious. You think that's what this is all about? Not my stamina, not your curiosity, but the possibility of offspring? Interbreeding between advanced species is nearly unheard of, she said, pulling up a double helix simulation on the screen. Most are incompatible at the cellular level. Different numbers of chromosomes, divergent protein bonds. The closest we've seen is assisted conception between Valar and Brelin, two species from the same evolutionary tree. But humans and Nexari are not from the same tree. She shook her head. We shouldn't even be close. Kale stepped closer to the simulation. Then what makes you think we might be? Serana paused, watching the model form on the screen. Because your genetic code is adaptive. Responsive. Your reproductive cells are capable of temporary protein restructuring. That's unheard of. And Nexari? Our biology is complex, she said. Highly sensitive, but more malleable than most. Our neural matrix allows for deeper biological resonance, especially with species that carry compatible hormone signals. If humans can adapt, and Nexari can accept. She trailed off. Kale finished the thought. Then a child isn't impossible. They stood silently as the two strands on the screen slowly aligned, bonding, folding together, forming a stable double helix. Serana's breath caught in her throat. It's a match. Kale looked at her. Serana, what does that mean? She turned to him, heart racing. It means we might already be the start of something new. Something no one has ever seen. A beat passed between them, scientific wonder giving way to a different kind of intensity. Kale's voice was low. Then maybe it's time we stopped guessing. Time to test the theory. Serana met his gaze, no hesitation in her own. For science, of course. He smiled. Naturally. And together they left the lab, no longer researcher and subject, but something else entirely. Pioneers on a path no one had dared walk before. Serana's quarters were on the upper ring of Unity Spire, set apart from the main lab facilities and surrounded by thick shielding to dampen neural feedback. It had always been her sanctuary, a quiet place filled with low ambient light, hollow crystals from her homeworld, and softly humming meditation spires that pulsed with Nexary harmonic tones. Now, it was her field lab. As the door sealed behind them, Cale paused just inside, his eyes scanning the environment. "You live in a meditation chamber?" She chuckled, removing her uniform jacket and draping it over the nearest chair. "Our minds are sensitive. Without these frequencies, Nexary can't sleep. Or function properly." Cale ran a hand along one of the vertical light structures embedded into the wall. "So this is where your species dreams. And now," she said, moving to a side table and pulling open a hidden drawer, "it's where we explore biological impossibilities." Inside was a sleek medical scanner, a portable diagnostics unit, and a case containing sterilized instruments for biosensory testing. She began setting them up with practiced hands. "First, we'll need to record baseline vitals, hormonal fluctuation, thermal response, neurovascular stimulation. Then proceed to induce proximity trials." Cale raised an eyebrow. "And proximity trials involve?" Serana looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Physical interaction. Increasing intensity. Monitored responses. We'll record everything. And adjust as necessary." He took a slow step forward, his expression serious now. "You're not just doing this out of curiosity anymore, are you?" Serana hesitated, then set the scanner down and turned to face him. "I started with curiosity. But that's not why I asked for you. Not entirely." She drew closer, close enough to feel the subtle heat radiating from his skin. "There's something else. Something I can't quantify. I've never reacted this strongly to another species' presence. My senses don't lie. They tell me we're biologically and neurologically intertwined. I've studied it in theory, but now I feel it." Cale reached out, brushing a hand against her cheek. Her breath caught as his skin met hers. "Then we study it. Together." She nodded once, then activated the diagnostic unit beside them. "Begin proximity trial 1, she said softly. "Physical contact. Baseline touch." Cale's hand slid to her waist. Serana closed her eyes, the scanner capturing the spike in her neural signals, heart rate, and sensory stimulation. She trembled, not from fear or uncertainty, but from the clarity of sensation. Nexary were known for sensitivity, but this was unprecedented. She looked up at him, voice barely a whisper. "We may need to repeat this trial. Several times. For accuracy." Cale smiled, drawing her closer. "I'm prepared to cooperate. Fully." And as their lips met for the first time, slow, exploratory, but charged with something ancient and undeniable, Serana knew that this wasn't just a study. It was the start of a revolution. The diagnostic unit continued to hum softly, recording every measurable fluctuation in Serana's neural activity. Its subtle blue glow bathed the room, pulsing in rhythm with her elevated pulse. She was usually in control, precise, composed, methodical. But now, she was spiraling into the unknown. Cale's touch was careful but certain, as though he understood exactly how far to push and when to stop. Serana had prepared herself for clinical detachment, for the sterile simplicity of a research session. But this was anything but simple. Every nerve in her body responded to his proximity like a system waking from centuries of slumber. The next sequence of scans triggered automatically as their bodies aligned, heart rates synchronizing, bioelectric fields overlapping. The unit emitted a soft chime of confirmation. Serana glanced at the data. "Neural harmonization is 93%, she murmured. "That's unheard of." Cale exhaled slowly. "Is that good?" "It's more than good." She stepped back to study the readings. "This level of harmonization usually only occurs between bonded Nexary partners, after years of neural attunement rituals. And we hit that just by kissing." She blinked. "Yes. which suggests something deeper than simple compatibility. Kale's brow furrowed, but not from confusion. You think this was more than coincidence? That we were already attuned? Serana hesitated, then tapped a sequence on the console. A new projection emerged, showing a fractal pattern within Kale's endocrine signature. Your hormonal matrix includes trace proteins not recorded in any other human file. They mimic Nexary neural markers. It's as if your biology had already begun adjusting for compatibility, long before we met. Kale frowned slightly. Is that even possible? Not unless. She trailed off. Unless what? Unless there's a genetic memory. Some fragment of ancestral coding activated by proximity to a suitable match. Kale looked skeptical. You think this is fate? I think, she said slowly, your body knew before either of us did. They stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the implications. Then Kale broke it with a quiet smile. Well, Doctor, it seems your research is evolving faster than expected. Serana allowed herself a soft laugh, tension finally breaking. The variables are multiplying. Then we adapt, Kale said, stepping closer again. That's what humans do. And Nexary, she whispered, her voice warming as his hand slid once more to her waist. We evolve. This time, when they kissed, it wasn't for the scanner. It wasn't for the data. It was for them. And no science in the galaxy could explain the feeling that bloomed between them. The following morning, Unity Spire was still under heightened security protocols. Patrol drones hovered outside key junctions. Hull breach teams worked tirelessly on Deck 6, sealing ruptures left by the raiders. But in Serana's quarters, the chaos of the previous night felt like a distant storm. Serana stirred beneath the soft folds of her bedding, the room still steeped in the lavender glow of her meditation lights. She blinked slowly, becoming aware of the warm pressure beside her, Kale's arm wrapped loosely around her waist, his breathing even and slow. The diagnostic unit blinked quietly in sleep mode at the corner of the room, its final log stored securely. She shifted slightly, careful not to wake him, and slid off the bedding. Barefoot, she padded to her console and pulled up the stored scans from their session. As her eyes swept over the data, a strange sensation settled over her, equal parts awe, anxiety, and disbelief. There it was. The anomaly. Elevated hormone markers. Shifts in cellular energy signatures. A new frequency in her neural rhythm. It all pointed to one impossible conclusion. She was pregnant. Serana stood still for a long moment, unable to move, her breath caught between excitement and fear. Nexary biology didn't make mistakes. Their reproductive systems were highly selective, conception only occurred under precise circumstances, and only with species deemed genetically safe. Yet, somehow, she had conceived naturally with a human male. With Kale. Her fingers flew over the console as she initiated a deep scan, verifying the embryo's presence, development, and, most critically, the DNA. The results returned swiftly, but not gently. The embryo showed hybrid markers. Human and Nexary genetic material coexisting in harmony. Active cell division. Strong signals. It was viable. More than viable, it was thriving. Serana? Kale's voice was groggy but laced with concern. She turned to find him sitting up, eyes narrowed slightly as they adjusted to the low light. You're up early, he said. Then he caught the expression on her face. What is it? She swallowed. I ran the data from last night. Something happened. More than harmonization. More than compatibility. He stood slowly, approaching her. Tell me. She looked up at him, the words catching in her throat. I'm pregnant, Kale. He froze. His amber eyes locked onto hers, searching for hesitation, disbelief, anything to contradict her words. But all he found was truth. Are you sure? She nodded. Completely. The embryo has both of our markers. It's healthy. And developing. Kale exhaled, stunned. So, it's possible. Everything we thought was impossible, it's happening. Yes. Serana said softly, emotion rising in her throat. We've done something no other pair of species has achieved. Natural conception. A living hybrid. For a long moment, Kale was silent. Then he reached for her, gently placing a hand over her lower abdomen. Then we protect it. Together. Serana leaned into him, closing her eyes. For all her years of science, of theory, of data, this was something she never could have predicted. A miracle in the making. By midday, Serana's lab was operational again. The outer sections had been sealed off, and the security team had taken up permanent positions outside her corridor. Officially, the attack was being investigated as an opportunistic raid. Unofficially, Serana wasn't so sure. Too many systems had been bypassed. Too many defense points ignored. It was as if the attackers knew exactly what they were looking for. Kale stood near the window, arms folded, gazing out at the debris fields slowly drifting past the station. He hadn't said much since Serana's revelation that morning. Not because he was distant, but because he was thinking. Calculating. We need to keep this quiet, he said without turning. Serana nodded, fingers tapping data logs into encrypted storage. Agreed. The embryo, it's beyond rare. If word gets out too early, people will try to take it. Study it. Use it. Kale's voice was cold now, every inch the soldier. You. The child. Both become assets. Serana finished locking her notes and turned toward him. I've already moved the files to a black access node. Encrypted. Biometric locks. No backups. Not even the AI can reach them without my consent. Kale turned to face her. Good. I'll file a report with the Terran Corps saying our compatibility studies are ongoing but inconclusive. Just enough to justify my continued presence here. She gave him a half smile. You're volunteering to be my full-time research subject then? Considering the result of the last trial, he said, stepping closer, I think we need a few more rounds of data. For accuracy. Her expression softened. I'm not used to having someone like you at my side. Someone willing to stay. I'm not going anywhere, Kale said, lifting her hand and holding it against his chest. This child, whatever it represents to the galaxy, to science, to us, it changes everything. And I'll fight anyone who tries to take that away. Serana leaned into him, breathing in the quiet strength that seemed to wrap around her like a shield. For so long, her work had kept her isolated. Now, she wasn't just carrying a new life. She was part of something much bigger, something intimate, unprecedented, and incredibly fragile. The door chimed. Kale stiffened and moved between her and the entrance. Who is it? A familiar voice crackled through the panel. Station Commander Velan. Requesting entry. Serana met Kale's eyes, nodding once. He deactivated the seal, and the door slid open with a hiss. Commander Velan entered, a tall, white-eyed Oralan with skin like onyx glass. His hands were folded neatly behind his back, but his expression was unreadable. Dr. Vile. Commander Riven, he said, nodding politely. I've reviewed the internal security logs. It appears the raiders targeted only your sector. Serana kept her voice calm. Perhaps they believed the lab contained advanced tech. Velan tilted his head. Perhaps. Or perhaps they were after something more specific. Your work has garnered attention before. Kale stepped forward. Dr. Vile's current research is strictly classified and protected under interspecies diplomatic law. Any breach would constitute an act of war. The commander's glowing eyes met Kale's. Then let us hope no further breaches occur. With that, he turned and exited, leaving behind a silence that lingered like smoke. Kale looked to Serana. They suspect something. She nodded, her fingers drifting again to her abdomen. Then we stay ahead of them, she whispered. And we protect what's ours. The following days moved quickly, yet each moment felt like it carried the weight of discovery. While the station repaired its physical wounds, Serana buried herself in analysis. She ran test after test, examining the embryo's growth in private sessions, taking care not to trigger automatic alerts in the medical system. Kale remained close. Whether posted near her quarters, shadowing her in the lab, or reviewing defense schematics with the station's chief of security, he never left her side for long. His protective instincts were beginning to shift, from reflexive to paternal. On the 6th day, Serana summoned him back into the lab. She stood before a wall-sized display of genetic overlays, her eyes fixed on 2 mirrored spirals rotating in tandem, one Nexary, one human. "This is the embryo's genomic strand," she said as he entered. "Half from you. Half from me. But there's something unexpected." Kale moved beside her. "What is it?" She highlighted a sequence. "This segment shouldn't exist. Not in either of us." He frowned. "A mutation?" "No. Something older. Deeper." She zoomed in, isolating a long protein chain. "This looks like an echo of ancestral coding, genetic fragments that don't appear in the modern records of either species. Could it be contamination?" She shook her head. "I've run the sequence 5 times. Whatever this is, it's not an error." Kale crossed his arms. "So what does it mean?" "I think the union of our DNA activated something dormant," she said. "Ancient genes buried deep in both our species. Genes that only awakened when they encountered each other." Kale studied the display, a line forming between his brows. "So this child could be carrying something new?" "Not just new," Serana said quietly. "Possibly something forgotten. An evolutionary path that diverged eons ago and is now reuniting." Kale turned to her, his tone serious. "You think our species were connected once?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But this could change everything we understand about our origins. About how life in the galaxy developed. Maybe the Raiders wanted our data not to study it, but to hide it. Suppress it." A long silence passed between them. "Are you afraid?" Kale asked finally. "Yes," she said. "But also, I've never felt more certain that this work matters." He stepped close, placing a hand over hers where it rested on the console. "Then we finish what we started. Together." She nodded. "But we'll need help. Quiet allies. Specialists who understand discretion." Kale smiled faintly. "I know a few. Trustworthy. Off-grid. They owe me favors." Serana's eyes lit with determination. "Then let's prepare. This child may be more than just a miracle of science. They might be the key to our forgotten past." Kale tightened his grip on her hand. "And maybe our future." 3 days later, while Serana calibrated an isolated scanner for neural analysis, Kale's wrist communicator buzzed softly. He stepped into the private alcove adjoining her lab to answer. "Riven," he said. A grizzled face appeared in the small hologram, blue static streaking through the signal. "Kale. It's Evar. I got your message. You weren't joking." "Not this time," Kale replied. "I need your help. And your silence." Evar grunted. "You're asking me to dig into off-record genetic data from both Terran and Nexary archives. That's gonna raise questions. Not if you use your old contacts in the biotrade circuits. Quiet access. No alerts. Can you do it?" There was a long pause. Then Evar's expression shifted. "You really care about this, don't you?" Kale didn't hesitate. "It's not just science anymore. It's personal." Evar's voice softened just a fraction. "Then I'll do it. But you need to be careful. Something's moving through the deeper channels. Data about Unity Spire's breach is spreading. Someone's looking for your doctor." Kale's jaw tightened. "Then we're out of time." The call ended. Kale rejoined Serana, who had turned to watch him, brow furrowed. "Another contact?" she asked. He nodded. "He'll get us what we need. But there's trouble. Word of the raid has leaked. And so has your name." Her expression didn't change, but her posture stiffened. "Then we'll need to accelerate everything. If others are coming, I want every scrap of research secured and hidden." They worked through the night, backing up critical files to decentralized quantum nodes, encoding genetic logs under scrambled neural key signatures. Sirona even extracted her own tissue samples to be stored in an encrypted vial Kale would carry at all times. As dawn approached, Sirona finally sank onto the couch in her quarters, exhausted. Kale brought her a small glass of cooling nectar, Nexary fruit extract designed to replenish neural electrolytes. "You need rest," he said. She sipped slowly, eyes heavy. "You'll stay?" Kale sat beside her. "Until I stop being useful." She leaned against him. "You're more than useful. You're the reason we've come this far." He wrapped an arm around her, silent for a long time. Then, "If we're being hunted, if someone really wants what we've created, I need to know you're prepared to disappear." Sirona looked up at him, the edges of her vision already swimming with exhaustion. "Leave the spire? If we have to, I'll get us out. There are places beyond known space. Safe ones." She nodded slowly. "If it comes to that, we go." Kale pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Then no matter what happens next, we survive." And in that dim, quiet space, surrounded by the hum of ancient biology and brand new life, the two of them sat together, knowing the days ahead would test everything they were, and everything they had become. Sirona woke to the low chime of a proximity alert. It wasn't the usual AI tone or a station-wide alarm. It was a localized ping. Someone had entered the lower research sublevel without authorization. She sat up instantly, alert. Kale was already awake, standing near the console in a black undershirt, hand on the grip of his weapon. "Section Theta-4," he said quietly. "They came in through the maintenance ducts." Sirona's eyes narrowed. "That level hasn't been used in months." "They're not after equipment," Kale said grimly. "They're here for you." He slipped on his light armor vest and tossed her a discreet pulse baton from the drawer. "Stay behind me. If it goes sideways, get to the secure pod and lock it down." "Not without you," she said. Kale gave her a look, but didn't argue. Together, they moved quickly and quietly into the secondary corridor. The spire was silent at this hour, lit only by dim blue navigation strips along the floor. The hum of ventilation systems masked their footsteps as they crept closer to the access lift that led down to Theta-4. Kale pulled up a holomap and projected it between them. 3 life signs were moving through the corridor below. Light armor, suppressed energy signatures, covert. Professional. He tapped his earpiece. "Station Control, this is Lieutenant Commander Riven. Unauthorized personnel in Theta-4. Lock down all exits from sublevels and redirect patrols to Grid 2. There was a pause. Then static. No reply. "They're jamming station comms," Sirona whispered. "They've come prepared." Kale gave a single nod. "Then we improvise." He opened the access hatch manually, descending the maintenance ladder with Sirona right behind him. The air was cooler here, tinged with rust and ozone. This part of the station hadn't been maintained in weeks, perfect for a hidden approach. Voices echoed faintly ahead. A sharp click, followed by a low whisper in a language neither of them recognized. Kale crouched behind a support beam and waited. When one of the intruders passed near the corner, he moved like lightning, grabbing the figure by the collar and slamming him against the wall. The attacker crumpled without a sound. Kale dragged him out of sight. The other two heard the scuffle. One spun, firing a pulse shot. The blast skimmed Kale's shoulder but didn't stop him. He fired once, clean through the intruder's leg. The third bolted down the hall, right toward Sirona, who was waiting with her baton. She struck with precision, the neural charge dropping the target to the floor in convulsions. Her heart thundered, but her grip didn't falter. Kale limped over, examining their gear. "They're not pirates. This is corporate spec. Encrypted identifiers, silent communication gear. Someone hired them." "For me," Sirona whispered, shaking. "For the child." Kale placed a hand on her back. "Not anymore. We're ending this." He accessed the down-comm unit and extracted its tracking data. As soon as he decrypted the last entry, His expression hardened. What is it? She asked. They didn't come from outside. They were already on the station. Serana froze. An inside job? Cale nodded. They were stationed here days ago. Hidden. Waiting for the right moment. Serana's eyes narrowed. Then we flushed them out. All of them. Cale looked at her, surprised and proud. We will. But first, we get you somewhere safe. She placed a hand over her abdomen. Safe isn't enough anymore. We need to go on the offensive. Back in her lab, Serana had transformed the central console into a makeshift command center. The lights were dimmed, casting long shadows across the floor, and the privacy protocols were set to maximum. Cale's wounded shoulder was bandaged, his jacket discarded, and a sidearm rested holstered at his hip. He stood beside her, watching as she projected the Spire's personnel logs into the air, sifting through them with rapid finger gestures. Every incoming vessel. Every temporary clearance issued. Every department assignment. This one, she said, freezing the display. Cargo Tech, assigned 3 days ago to Bay 12. No name, just a ciphered ID. Cale leaned in. That's not protocol. Even contractors get registered. She flicked to another screen. And here, see this? 2 shipments of cryo-storage gear delivered without any request from the Xenobiology wing. No requisition order, no trace in the official logs. They were staging an extraction. Cale muttered. They wanted to grab you, grab your research, and vanish before anyone noticed. Then someone on the inside helped them. Serana added, highlighting security access codes attached to the unauthorized entries. I'll need to cross-reference these access stamps. There's a signature embedded, looks like a modified Nexary encryption. Cale's face darkened. A Nexary helped them? It's not impossible, Serana said softly. There are factions who oppose hybrid research. Purists who believe our biology should remain unaltered. Cale didn't speak for a moment. Then we deal with them, too. She turned to him. Cale, if someone on the council is involved, then it won't stop here, he said grimly. Unity Spire is a test. If they succeed in taking you, they'll do it again. On other stations. On other species. Serana stood straighter, her expression hardening. Then we release the research. Cale looked at her in surprise. Are you sure? She nodded. Not everything. Not the child. But enough. Enough to prove what's possible. If the public knows, if the scientific community sees it, it can't be buried. It becomes truth. Cale considered it. It's a risk. And doing nothing is a greater one. She stepped close, taking his hand. We're already part of this. You. Me. The child. We're the proof. The danger isn't what we are, it's who might try to control it. Cale's expression softened. Then we go public. Carefully. Our terms. Our timeline. Serana nodded and began preparing the data packet. I'll send it to the Interstellar Archive under anonymous credentials. It'll reach over 30 academic networks in 24 hours. As she worked, Cale watched her with something more than admiration. He had come here expecting routine diplomacy, at worst, a dry scientific debate. But what he had found was history being rewritten. And Serana, she wasn't just a brilliant researcher. She was a revolution wrapped in purple skin and starlight. He stepped closer, resting a hand gently over her lower abdomen. Whatever happens next, he said, I'm with you. All the way. She looked up at him, her voice firm and steady. Good. Because we're just getting started. There's a place, Cale said, voice low as he studied the encrypted map on Serana's console. Off-grid. No official records. Deep in neutral space, just outside the Myro fringe. Serana turned to him, eyebrows raised. A safe house? Not exactly. It's a site. Abandoned, but structurally intact. Used during the early phase of Terran exploratory expansion. Originally built to study environmental anomalies on planetary crusts. My team nicknamed it the Dust Vault because of the thick atmosphere. But the official name was Mondlich Site 7. Mondlich, she repeated. That word doesn't appear in any of your archive records. Exactly, Kale said with a faint smile. It was wiped from most systems after a terraforming failure made the atmosphere uninhabitable for most species. But humans can survive there for limited periods, and Nexary neural systems are resistant to the radiation. So you're suggesting we relocate there? Surana asked. Kale leaned forward. It's unmonitored. Shielded by the planet's crust and magnetic storms. We'd be off the grid. If anyone is trying to take you, or our child, they'd have to find us first. Surana stared at the slowly rotating 3D projection of the site. Harsh terrain, constant particle storms, and a world where only the strongest lifeforms could adapt. The irony wasn't lost on her. I'll need to modify my environmental suit for prolonged exposure, she murmured. And take backups of every log we've collected. I'll handle the transport, Kale said. I can borrow a stealth-class vessel from my old contact in the Alteris Fringe. He owes me more than a few favors. Surana nodded, determination solidifying. How soon can we leave? Within 48 hours, Kale replied. But there's something else. The site contains old equipment, unused medical labs, terraforming controls, deep earth stabilizers. If we can get them running again, we could build more than a hiding place. Surana caught his meaning. A research station. A future, he said quietly. For us. For the child. Maybe for others like us, if they ever come. A long silence passed, one filled with growing gravity. Then Surana looked at him and said, Then let's do it. No hesitation. No fear. Just purpose. They weren't running anymore. They were preparing for something greater. 48 hours later, Unity Spire's main hub was alive with movement, on the surface, a return to normal operations. But in the shadows, Surana and Kale prepared for their quiet exit. They moved swiftly, avoiding main corridors, accessing maintenance shafts, and bypassing biometric checkpoints with Kale's coded overrides. The vessel Kale secured was waiting in a seldom-used launch bay, tucked beneath scaffolding marked for deconstruction. It was old, Terran-made, with its hull partially scorched from atmospheric re-entries. But it was stealth-rated, short-range warp-capable, and, most importantly, off-record. Surana approached it with a data crate slung over her shoulder. All logs transferred. Medical files, embryonic scans, sequence data, and every iteration of the hybrid genome. Kale took the crate and stored it inside the cockpit compartment. Good. You sure about this? She looked up at him. You. He smiled. I'm the one who suggested it. They boarded the vessel, sealing the hatch behind them. Surana entered the co-pilot's seat while Kale took the helm, his fingers dancing across the outdated console with practiced ease. Beginning departure sequence. Launch Corridor 27. Masking drive engaged. The engines hummed to life. A moment later, they slipped silently out of the station's outer docking ring, swallowed by the dark. No alarms. No pursuit. Just stars, and the faint glimmer of Mondlich 7 waiting far beyond known lanes. As they jumped into subwarp, Surana reclined her seat slightly, exhaustion pressing down on her after so many sleepless nights. Her hand rested over her belly, where faint neural signals now pulsed constantly from within, a growing consciousness, responsive and strong. Kale watched her for a moment before speaking. I know this wasn't your plan. It wasn't yours either, she murmured. And yet here we are. Running from people who should be protecting us, she added. Maybe, Kale said. But we're also running towards something. Toward proving a truth no one else dared believe. Her eyes fluttered open. That life can evolve between species. That love isn't limited by biology. Kale reached out and took her hand. That something beautiful can exist in defiance of every rule. The vessel hummed as it slipped through silent corridors of subspace, the stars stretching into white streaks. A new home awaited them, one filled with dust, secrets, danger, and opportunity. But for the first time since their paths had crossed, Serana felt at peace. Together, they had crossed the line between science and emotion. And what lay ahead would be the test of both. The descent through Mondlich Vi's atmosphere was violent. Kale gripped the controls with steady hands as the old vessel rattled under the strain of the dense magnetic storms below. Orange lightning cracked across the sky, striking the clouds like a drumbeat from a furious god. Beneath them, the planet's cracked surface came into view, wastelands of deep ochre and ash gray, pitted with jagged spires of obsidian rock. Serana remained calm beside him, one hand braced on the console while the other shielded the protective case resting in her lap. It held the embryo's secure backup, genetic maps, hormonal scans, and cellular development logs. It could not be lost. "Stabilizers holding," Kale muttered. "We'll have to land manually. Autonav struggling to keep up with the interference." "I'm reading a ridge formation on the far side of the crater basin," Serana said, examining the terrain scanner. "That's where the original site was established." Kale angled the vessel downward, and moments later they broke through the last layer of cloud. The old research site emerged from the dust, half buried by erosion, a fortress of weathered steel built into the rock. Its landing pads were crumbling, but the central structure stood intact. "Touchdown in 10, Kale said. The landing was rough, but controlled. Dust and ash billowed around the vessel as its legs settled into the hardened soil. The moment the hum of engines faded, silence enveloped them, thick and alien. Kale powered down the systems. "Welcome to Mondlich 7. They exited the vessel together, both wearing light exosuits that shielded against the radiation and particulate air. The wind howled over the ridge, swirling dust between them as they crossed the open ground. Serana's visor displayed environmental readouts: low oxygen, high radiation, extreme fluctuations in magnetic field polarity. Unlivable for most species, but perfect for isolation. The old research facility loomed ahead. Kale bypassed the access panel with a portable fusion key, and the doors hissed open, protesting from years of disuse. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. The walls were lined with dormant lights, consoles blank and covered in dust. Serana inhaled deeply. "It's still intact. This place, we can make it work." They moved quickly through the corridors, checking for structural integrity. The main lab remained sealed. The medbay had power. And deep beneath the facility, the old terraforming core still thrummed faintly, its systems running in standby. By nightfall, they had power restored in the central wing and sealed the perimeter. They stood on the observation deck overlooking the barren landscape below. Above, Mondlich's 2 moons hung in the sky, pale and distant. "It's ugly," Kale said, staring into the dust-blown dark. "But it's ours." Serana stood beside him, one hand resting over her abdomen. "A place to build. To learn. To protect what we've created." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "We're safe, for now." And in the silence of a forgotten world, their new beginning truly began. By the end of their first week on Mondlich 7, Serana had transformed the central lab into a functioning research station once more. The lights now glowed steadily overhead, the air was filtered, and the atmospheric shields around the facility had stabilized. She stood in the middle of the lab, a thin layer of perspiration glistening on her forehead as she adjusted the neurofeedback nodes lining the primary diagnostic table. She'd calibrated the equipment to her own unique Nexary frequencies, tuning the sensors to the delicate pulses she now felt every hour from within her womb. The child's development was accelerating. Kale entered, his steps silent, carrying a crate of salvaged med supplies he'd recovered from a forgotten storeroom near the cargo wing. His sleeves were rolled to the elbow, dust on his arms, a light cut on one hand. But his eyes lit up when they met hers. "How's our starlight?" he asked softly. Serana smiled. "Growing stronger. I've never seen such rapid cellular alignment in a hybrid embryo. Every scan is rewriting what we thought was biologically possible." Kale set the crate down. "And you? How are you holding up?" She hesitated before answering. "I'm adapting. Nextary pregnancies are normally regulated, tightly controlled by our physiology. But this one is different. The child is triggering unpredictable hormonal waves. Sometimes it feels like they're aware. Kale raised a brow. You think they're conscious? Not fully, she said, brushing a hand over her abdomen. But responsive, yes. When I feel something, there's feedback. Subtle neural echoes. Like a two-way current. Telepathic? Kale asked. Surana looked up at him. Not quite. But close. If this continues, our child may be the first of a new neural class, nextary human synthesis capable of something more. Kale stepped forward, his expression unreadable for a moment. That future scares me sometimes. She blinked. Why? Because it means they'll be hunted, he said. Feared. Controlled. The galaxy isn't ready for this, Surana. It's barely ready for the idea of compatibility. She moved to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. That's why we're here. To prepare. To protect. He leaned his forehead against hers. And if they come? Then we fight. Together. Later that night, as a storm howled against the facility's shielding dome, Kale stood watch while Surana slept, her hand resting on her belly. He watched the security feeds, tracking every inch of the barren ridge outside. They were no longer running. They were anchoring themselves in the dust and building the future from nothing. And Kale would guard it with his life. 3 weeks after their arrival on Monglich 7, something changed. Kale was in the upper comms wing, running a diagnostic on the short-range transmitters they'd reassembled using scavenged parts. It was mostly a redundancy, an early warning system if anyone entered the system. But today, as he recalibrated the relay's frequency, a flicker pulsed across the panel. A signal. Encrypted. Weak. But intentional. He immediately secured the feed, routed it through Surana's data filters, and pinged her through the comm line. Surana. I think someone's trying to find us. She was in the lower medbay when his voice reached her, and she rose from the skin console, her heart leaping. I'm on my way. Minutes later, she arrived beside him. Kale projected the data into the air between them. It was a pulse transmission, a short burst containing a single string of Nexary code followed by a Terran response key. This isn't random, Surana said, her eyes narrowing. It's a handshake pattern, a dual-species encryption system. Only someone who knows about us could use this. Kale nodded. It's a message, Surana. A call. And look at the origin point, it's from deep within Helix Fold territory. That's Council space. Her pulse spiked. Then it's either someone from the Nexary High Assembly, or someone inside the rebellion. The ones who don't want the truth buried. We need to decide fast, Kale said. Do we answer it? Surana stared at the data for a long moment. If they found us, she said quietly, they already know more than we'd like. But if they're allies, this might be our only chance to bring what we've learned to the right people. Kale looked at her, then down at her gently swelling belly. You're sure? Yes, she said with resolve. It's time. We can't hide forever. This child deserves a galaxy that understands them. Kale initiated the return ping, locking their coordinates behind a dozen proxy nodes. Signal sent. If they're who we hope, they'll come. As the console dimmed, they stood together in the quiet hum of the control center, knowing the moment they'd spent weeks preparing for had finally arrived. The world was coming for them. This time, they would face it head-on.